guys, welcome to Moms on a Mission. We would love to hear from you. So please go to momsonamission.net. That's momsonamission.net. You can also email us with questions and comments at momsonamission53@gmail.com. That's momsonamission53@gmail.com. And also follow us on your favorite platform.
Today's episode is sponsored by our good friends at MyPillow. MyPillow makes the best pillows, slippers, mattress toppers, and let me just say the slippers are to die for, and they are so economical. I had another pair that was from another brand that I won't mention, but they were $99. They were indoor outdoor slippers, and these bad boys are beautiful. They're blush pink, they're indoor outdoor, and they last forever, and they're a fraction of the price. I was a little bit hesitant, but after I bought them and wore them, yeah, ours match. We both got.
I wear them all the time.
Blush pink.
All the time.
That's the way to go. So anyway, you should just try them. You can use our code MISSION. If you just type in MISSION at checkout, you will get a discount. That's code MISSION, and that's mypillow.com.
Well, our guest today is the owner and founder of Mary Grace Media Network and is the host of Grace Time TV. She is an independent journalist, a commentator, a dynamic public speaker, accomplished vocalist, songwriter, and entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Mary Grace.
Hey, Mary Grace. Welcome to Moms on a Mission. Tell us a little about yourself, like who you are and what you do.
First of all, thank you, ladies, so much for having me. It's just a pleasure to be here. I love talking to you. I think this is the beginning of a very long friendship. A little bit about me. Well, I've been podcasting for quite some time, but like a lot of people, I didn't really set out as my life's goal to be a podcaster. I got into this because I just wanted to get information out, and I wasn't finding really good, reliable sources of truth. And so I picked up my phone, started podcasting, and it turns out people wanted to hear what I had to say, which I still find astonishing. However, they do. And so it's kind of fun to be in that space. But you know, along the way, I've also I've done a lot of traveling. I have I've worked in the education space. I've worked in sales, entrepreneurship. At this point, I'm very much on my own, which I love because it gives me the freedom to take care of my family, to have my time to myself, and to do my podcast. And of course, there's a lot that we need to be doing because of what's going on in our country. And so I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to do all the things that I do.
We are thankful too, and so glad to have met you. And I agree, this is the beginning of a great relationship. And as you know, Mary Grace, we are all about education with Moms on a Mission, trying to help turn the education system in the right direction and, you know, speaking the truth to our children. And so we are most interested in knowing more about your experience as a teacher. So if you could talk to us about that a little bit.
Sure. I've been a lifelong teacher. It's just sort of in my blood to teach and educate. And I decided several years after my undergrad to go back to graduate school and get a master's in education. So I became a reading specialist, a master's, and so I'm an MED with a focus on reading and reading development and early childhood. And that has been, that was something that I did for 12 years. And in the process of doing that, I taught in the US, I traveled overseas, I taught in Italy, Switzerland, South Africa, and I had the opportunity to not only to see other cultures, but to teach in American schools immersed in those cultures. And I'm really grateful that I had those opportunities because teaching in American schools in the US and teaching in American schools abroad are two vastly different experiences. And one of the things that I noticed when I was abroad was that as a teacher, you typically had a lot more freedom. There was less bureaucracy and more freedom just to teach. You also had a highly motivated clientele because most of the students, these were all private schools, and most of the families were just valued education. Many of them were from Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and they place an entirely different value on the teacher than we've seen here in the U.S. And because of that, I was really able to develop very strong relationships with the children, the families, the faculty in those places, and also just to see the contrast of the way schools are run in different parts of the world, in addition to getting exposed to dozens of different cultures all in one place. At one point I had a classroom of 24 students, and there were, I think, 36 nationalities represented. Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
Because so many of my students had double passports, double and triple, because they had parents from different countries. So that was just crazy, but it was very eye-opening. And living in those countries, I also saw just how these countries worked on a socioeconomic level. And for example, living in Switzerland, it's a socialist country, and they're in your business from the minute you set foot in the country. I mean, I literally had to register with the local, not consulate, it was the local authorities, and they knew exactly where I lived, when I got there, what was on my visa, how long I could stay. And it gives you a lot of perspective when you look at our immigration system in this country. I couldn't even be there unless I had the ability to offer something in the school that a Swiss national could not offer, which was that I was a native English speaker. And so that just gives you a lot of perspective. Being there gave me perspective on our entire way of life in the U.S., the good, the bad, the ugly. But coming back to the U.S., to the school system, I was teaching, it's been a while since I've been in the schools, but one of the things that I noticed when I was teaching was the push toward political correctness, even at the time that I was in the schools. And I noticed they were using words like diversity. They were using words, it was like a soft push to diversity. And at the time, it really had to do with recognizing different holidays. For example, Kwanzaa, the made-up holiday, and then the move away from saying Christmas, and it was, like I said, it was a soft pull away from the values that we have had traditionally in this country, and so it was, I guess it was the beginning of what I would call the diversity hiring boom as well. So you had teachers who were being hired with limited skill. You had administrators who were put in positions because of diversity quotas. And the people who really suffered from that were the students.
Yes.
And so it's very political. Being in the government school system, I saw very much the political side of things. And I also saw the ugly side of legacy teachers who were vested and who couldn't be fired, and who were just waiting, what do you call it, tenured? They were just waiting, biding their time until they got their pension. And it really wasn't that attractive to me. That's why I left, because I was.
And one of the things I want to bring up, because you're making such a great point, while you were maybe at the end of your career, you saw this, but the political correctness, education changing, curriculum changing, education, seeing not good results for our kids. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but the New York Times yesterday or the day before just has written a story. It's very fascinating to me because it's starting to, it's not just a Republican issue or conservative issue or a Christian issue. It's going all out.
It's bipartisan.
Yeah, bipartisan. The NAACP. I mean, people that we think to be on the left side and liberal. But the article was called Kids Can't Read. Parents Are Fed Up with Low and Lower Reading Scores. And we'll link that in our page. But what was fascinating to me is that, and it's a small glimmer of hope, that parents are waking up a little and demanding curriculum change because the reading scores, and I don't want to quote this exactly, it's in the article, but somewhere between a third and two-thirds, and that's a big difference, of our kids are not reaching benchmark levels in third grade and eighth grade because we've been bringing in curriculum over the past several years that does not work, but it's been marketed to work. And we've had teachers coming in and being trained, but there was not a scientific approach to the reading. And they've spent millions and millions of taxpayer dollars, and many kids have been exposed to this curriculum and can't read because of it. So because you're a reading specialist, I don't know if you've heard about the article or also a podcast called Soul to Story. I know we mentioned that to you last time, and we'll link that as well. But I'm just interested on your take about reading curriculum in general, because I know there are a lot of parents who are frustrated that their kids can't read, and they should be able to.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors that go into this, and I haven't read the article, so I don't want to speak directly to that. But I can tell you, as a reading specialist, the principles of learning to read really haven't changed, and so I believe that when you bring in the wokeness into the schools, and you have teachers who are in teacher training who are getting more focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion than on the basics of teaching children how to read, that right there is a red flag. And going back to when I was in my training, I was in a system. I was in a good system. I got my master's at James Madison University, and their reading program was basically an offshoot of the reading program at the University of Virginia, and they're known for their reading department in early childhood. The directors of the program that I was in fought tooth and nail to make sure that the undergraduate students in education had one class in literacy, in teaching reading, that was focused on teaching children how to read. And these are primary school teachers who are teaching kindergartners and first graders. And this was in the 90s that we had that. And I was actually the head of I was in charge of the reading clinic at the time. And so I was supervising the undergraduate students who were tutoring local children as a part of their own practicum for their degree. And this was the one class that these undergraduate students were required to take to learn the principles of teaching reading. That if that was the case then, I don't even know if they're getting this course now. I don't even know if they're getting a practicum where they're sitting down with real children, teaching them how to read. And so this is a big concern because there are lots of different schools of thought about how children learn to read, whether rote learning is a good thing, whether they should learn phonics, whether they should learn the ABCs, whether they should be taught to actually to write the letters, to do manuscript where they're just going, down, up, over, like those basic things that we learned. I'm a firm believer in all of those because one of the bedrocks of reading, of effective reading, is fluency. And, you get fluent in something by repeated practice in that thing. And we see this when we observe children who are mimicking their parents.
Right.
We see children who say certain things that maybe we didn't want them to say. Well, where did they learn it? They were practicing because it was being modeled to them. Right. Same thing with walking, with any of the fine motor skills, the gross motor skills. These are things that children learn by practice, by rote memory and practice. And so the further away you get from those basic principles, the harder it is to have a literate population. Now, do I think that there's an ulterior motive here? Absolutely. And that is, in some ways, do I have time to get philosophical here for just a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe that we're living in a time that is closer to the pre-Gutenberg printing press than it ever has been. And the reason that I say that is that we have a population who is deprived of the written word to a degree that I think hasn't happened since before the printing press was invented. And information was highly controlled before that time. You had a population that got their information from the scribes and the priests who told them what the Bible said, if they told them at all.
Yeah.
They told them what religion said. All of the rules and superstitions, all of the news, everything that people knew came from the town crier, from oral tradition. And when the printing press came in to be invented, that was, of course, it was shortly after that Martin Luther challenged the Catholic Church because for the first time the Word of God was available for anyone to read. And
Which
this is
really
a big deal.
And it's really empowering. And I think that's at the crux of this is with that printing press, you're no longer relying on a narrative being taught to you as the truth or their truth.
Right.
You actually have access to all the information and you can find the truth, yourself,
Right.
which is really a disparaging thought for somebody who's trying to, wield their power and use that inappropriately, or maybe appropriately, but just to not allow people to find the truth for themselves, which leads me to the question of, and this is a perfect segue, and that is, what do you think about the current culture in the public school system, number one, and number two, what would you recommend for parents to do who are seeking a good education for their children?
I think the current culture I call it the government schools, is toxic. And I think that I think there are well-meaning teachers and administrators who do love children. I think that their hands are tied because again, I know that they are in a situation where even if they wanted to teach reading in a traditional way, they're stuck, because they can only give each child a few minutes a day of individual instruction. Children who are read to consistently from the womb to kindergarten receive about 5,000 hours of reading instruction before they walk in the door of kindergarten. Think about that.
That's wow.
Okay. It takes 10,000 hours of practice to become proficient in something. And so you compare that to children who don't have that access. So let's take our society and look at what's happening now. You have a greater percentage of the population that is being handed tablets. They're being put in front of screens. They're not being given books. And this is affecting literacy overall, not just being able to read words, but vocabulary development, cultural literacy, because reading is very different from looking at a screen. They're two completely different brain activities. And so this is something that I think is important for people to understand as education trends more toward using screens, toward putting children in front of screens, using the internet, having them in front of screens. They're not learning those basics. They're just not. And this goes back to the printing press. When this is happening, the information and the knowledge is highly controlled because, there's nothing worse than the tyranny of low expectations. And when you have children who are put in a position of not being expected to rise above a certain level, then they won't. And that to me is intentional. There's a reason that slaves were never allowed to learn how to read and that they were punished if they did. Okay, so that was a little deep.
I think that actually plays into our whole focus and actually the Battle for the American Mind, the book which inspired this podcast, and that is classical education. And any school that is a classically educated type school has very high standards, and it's very difficult and it's very robust, and the kids I have a friend who is in classical conversation. Her students are in classical conversations, and her kids initially pushed back on some of the reading requirements because it was so robust. It was so hard. But when you think back to when kids were growing up back in Jesus' time, I mean, I believe I've been told that they had to memorize a lot of scripture back then, like books, not verses, not chapters. And I feel like our expectations have dropped dramatically in America and for reading and for education, so much so that the kids hit the bar that is established for them. And if you keep, lowering the bar, I think that you're not going to see, complete excellence and kids really mastering everything that they can.
Well, it's not just back in Bible times. In my mother's time, in my grandmother's time, in education, they were expected to learn entire bodies of literature. Poems of Walt Whitman. They knew it from start to finish. And, everything that I learned from my grandmother and her siblings, it was all literate. So even learning my times tables, there was a rhyme to help me do that. Learning the days of the week, the months of the year, all of these things were taught from a literary standpoint, and you were taught to memorize it. And so I want to answer your question, though, about what can parents do. I do believe that the classical education is an answer, but where can a parent start, especially if somebody is not a parent yet or is a parent of young children? I want to go back to what I was saying about the 5,000 hours, because we now know that children respond to stimulus even in the womb. And so the things that you say, the books that you read, what comes out of your mouth actually can have an impact on that developing child in the womb. And
you have a link for that, because I would love to check that out.
I would love to.
Do you know
as
where
well.
we could find it?
This is just my knowledge from.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find something, but
so fascinating.
But think about it, because God says, I knit you together in your mother's womb, and so of course He knew us and planned us before the foundation of the world, and He has a destiny on our lives. And part of my mandate as just a living, breathing human being is to help people walk into their destiny, and they cannot do that until they can understand, not only access the truth, but understand how to discern it. And to me, the earlier you start teaching children critical thinking and developing those higher level thinking skills, the better, and engaging them in conversation. So that's one thing, talking to your children like people. Now, that doesn't mean that you put the weight of adult decisions and conversations on them. There's a very fine line there. There's a difference. And I want parents to understand this. There is a maturity level that your child has where there are topics that are too old for them, that are too mature for them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just talking to your children like they're people. And that's what I did when I taught kindergarten. I didn't talk down to them. I didn't do the cheesy, syrupy language, hi. That was just so not me.
I can't see you doing that.
No,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I was like, kids, somebody came to tattle to me, and I would just say, okay, well, what do you want me to do about it? What solution do you think would be best? I talk to them like that. And then just getting them to think, oh, well, okay, well, if she punishes him for this, then next time I do this, then that's what I'm going to get. So I got to be careful about what I tell her I want, things like that. But when it comes to children, talking to them reasonably, rationally, not letting them run your house. That's not what I mean. And, but also reading to your children. So going back to what I was saying, to what they're able to understand and comprehend, they are watching your every move. A child who is just born is a blank slate, and they develop very quickly, not as quickly as like a newborn calf or foal, thank God. You have a little more time to mold them, but they're absorbing everything that you give them. Another example is language. When a child is born, it's believed that they babble every single sound and syllable known to man. And so, for example, when they're doing things like you know, it's like Chinese. Okay.
Yeah.
But when because they're born into an English speaking home or a French speaking home or whatever, they start to filter out those other mouth movements in favor of the shapes and sounds that constitute the English language. And a good example of that is if you ever tried to learn Spanish and you try to learn to roll your R's, you sort of lost that ability. Some people lose it, some people don't, right? So,
Mine's
you know,
lost for sure.
when I was learning Spanish, I was taught el perro corre en el ferrocarril, right? And I had to learn how to roll my R's, right? Or when you're speaking French, you learn how to make those sounds. Well, a baby already makes those sounds. And why is that important? Because they're observing and mimicking what everyone around them does. And this is why children who are brought up in a bilingual household have a better absorption of a second language or a third language, that kind of thing. So why am I saying this? Because again, they're a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
And so they absorb and develop in areas that you nurture. They lose things that you don't nurture. And so if you're not talking to your child, if you're not actively reading to your child, if your child isn't holding a book in their hand and learning that those things on the page are actual words that are separated by spaces, if they're not watching you modeling reading a book and going from side to side and touching the words and turning the pages, that's not something that children are born knowing. They don't inherently know that. That's a learned, absorbed behavior, just like language. Learning to read is reading is a distinct language. And here's how you know that. If you play a tape recording of somebody just talking, having a conversation, and then you play a tape recording of somebody reading a book, can you tell that the person is reading the book? Yes, you can. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, Frog baked cookies. Toad wanted to eat the cookies. Frog said no. We don't talk like that. That is what's called the prosody of written language. It's very distinct. And children learn that as they learn to read. They learn the ability, they develop the ability to read and track and to use that language. And it's a language that they learn. They have to be taught that.
And Mary, that is exactly what this article is talking about in Sold a Story. I know you haven't even listened to it or got against it, but just this whole cognitive science behind reading, and that we've gotten away from that. And so everything you said to me is so fascinating. And I hope that we can continue this conversation.
Yes.
Because as this article points out, and I know plenty of people in our hometown, I've even had 2 experiences with some of my children, reading, there's a process to it. We just don't come out of the womb learning to read, but as parents, we can take steps to help our kids to learn to read at a high level. And this morning in my car, just to encourage people along the way, my daughter, we were having this conversation because we've been talking to a new classical school that's getting started here. And one of the founders was on our show talking about we need to challenge our children to read hard books. I mean, Aristotle, Plato, and his son last night even was saying, Dante's Inferno, it's his favorite book. And I'm like, this is what we want to hear from our children. But my daughter, we were in the car and she said, Mom, my English teacher this year, my reading teacher has inspired me. And she said, did you know my scores are up higher? And I said, Kate, I have watched you all year and read with her some, even as an 8th grader. We've been reading a hard book by George Orwell, which I'm beyond thrilled that our school is taking that on in the 8th grade and having unbelievable conversations. So I just encourage parents, even with 8th graders, high schoolers, pick up books and read with them. Maybe it'll jog your memory from high school, but I love this topic and I want to at some point pick it back up because you are a wealth of knowledge, Mary. I get so excited.
And on that note, my son, he goes to the same school, is also reading Dante's Inferno, or has read it.
Yeah.
And he, I'm just telling you, he did not like it, and he complained about it a lot.
You need to read it with him.
Yes,
Mary.
I probably should read that with him.
Yeah.
There was that struggle and that like, oh, it's so boring, and it just talks about hell the whole time, and it's not very positive, and and because it was uncomfortable, it was rigorous, and it was pushing him, outside of his comfort zone.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, and I think that is what it's all about in educating kids and getting them to reach their potential, God-given potential. And it's not always fun, let's be honest. And I think that challenge is actually quite good for them.
Well, hopefully they'll get to Paradiso after this. I mean, it doesn't end at Inferno. But yeah, it's interesting because my niece is in college and she's majoring in English like her aunt. And she was reading Chaucer, and I said, "What did you think of Chaucer?" She goes, she goes, "I'm not sure." And she's a big reader. She loves to read, but she was just kind of like, I'm not sure I understand the hype. I said, well, just think of Chaucer as the dank meme lord of his time. He was calling out all of the hypocrisy of the church. He was really shining a spotlight on a lot of the things that, our digital soldiers are doing today with memes. And this is one of the reasons that, people like him, even like Shakespeare, aren't encouraged because it does raise awareness of writers who were using satire and humor, which is what is happening today, with memes, to bring awareness to the truth of what's going on behind the scenes and corruption and things like that. So it's just very interesting. But I want to say one thing too about reading with your kids. People think that once their children are able to read on their own, especially when children start reading silently, that they're home free and they don't ever have to pick up a book and read with their child again. I'm just going to say to parents, stop that. That's wrong. And I'll tell you why. I'm being forceful about it because first of all, you don't understand, you don't know, let me back up. Your child's intellect and their comprehension ability is generally way higher than their reading ability. And so, so you want to expose them to literature that they may not be able to read. Also, when children are reading silently, you literally have no idea what's going on in that head of theirs. They could be skipping every third word. And that means that they're not actually reading fluently. They're not comprehending what they're reading.
That's good.
And so, and not only that, it stops the conversation that you're having with them. And you don't want that. You don't want to put your child in free agent status at the age of 8. You want them to be involved. You want to be involved and have conversations. And one of the most meaningful conversations you can have is around literature. And we're talking good literature, not the trash that you see today in Barnes and Noble.
Underpants.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking. Yeah, just go get the Newbery Award winners and the Caldecott winners, and you're kind of in a good place. But this is something important that parents need to understand. I was in high school, and my mom was a great reader, and she didn't graduate from college, but she was a great reader, and she helped me with all of my papers. And so, because she had read all the books. And I would sit there with her, I would write my papers, she would read them, she would give me feedback. And that was just invaluable because she was involved with what we were doing. And so you don't have to be a college graduate. You don't have to have all kinds of degrees to be involved with your child's learning. Reading books and getting physical books is one of the best things you can do. And, go to the library. Just when you go to the library, I just want to say that I have a little trick that I do in the library when I see all the woke books is that I just casually pull them off the shelf and somehow manage to misshelve them way in the back of the library.
Strange.
I love her.
So weird how that happens.
I just I put it somehow it gets put back in the wrong place behind, books on
missing for a few months.
Yeah. And then I'm just like,
We're
gosh, I
saving
thought
people's lives.
I
Yeah.
didn't know where to put it. So I just shelved it somewhere like in the back, nether reaches of the library, and one day they'll find it. But do that. You just, deal with that and then just go and find the good literature for your kids. It's usually not what's featured.
And I want to say this for this podcast. I know we're talking about reading and beginning to read, but honestly, I think this applies to however old your child is, if he or she is still in the home, to know what they're reading, to look at their reading, to maybe read along with them or read excerpts, read reviews. I think it's very important to know what your child is reading, number one. Number two, if you have an older child or a child in college, at some point, once you have kids, then you're going to have grandkids. So this does matter to us, even as our children are getting older. We need to know what's going on for our grandkids' sake. Or like Mary Grace, like in your situation, your niece. I mean, we all have nieces. Most of us have nieces and nephews, and some of them could be younger. And so I just think it's important, the why. Like, why are we talking about this? Why are we doing this? If, you might think, oh, I'm going to tune out because, I have a 16-year-old, so I don't really need to talk about reading. But we need to be involved no matter what the age is, just because of that. So,
yes. And, literature, reading, education is the book that drives the engine of your child into their destiny. And so going back to the 16-year-old, is it wise to give your 16-year-old free rein with the car and the keys and the bank account? No.
Right.
So
and
for
a
the
phone,
same reason, and a phone, right? For the same reason, ask yourself, is it wise to assume that my child, my 16-year-old, is capable of making good decisions about their reading material and discerning what it is that they're consuming? Now, are you going to stop them from everything? No, but you're going to have meaningful conversations with them that help them to understand not only why something might be wrong or right or morally unsound, but how to argue that, how to have those conversations. Because we have an entire generation of millennials that think that when you challenge them, you're angry at them and you're yelling at them. They don't know how to engage in debate.
Snowflakes.
Yeah.
Or
and
whatever.
critical thinking. So we hate to have to bring this to a close because we could talk to you for hours, and we will get to it again. But we want to quickly ask how people can get a hold of you. Your website is Mary Grace Media. Is that correct?
MaryGraceMedia.com. And if people want to follow me, they can go to MaryGraceMedia.com. And then what I recommend is that you go to the very top of the page. Go to the top, click on the link, and subscribe to my mailing list. Go to the very top. There you go. And so click on that, and you can get to my mailing list. And that way, when I have shows, so when I have shows, when I go live, I will typically send out a notice for that. Also, I'm still on some of the woke platforms, and if you're following me on those platforms like Facebook, there's a chance that you may wake up one day and not be able to find Mary Grace. So definitely get on my mailing list. That's the easiest way to follow me. But MaryGraceMedia.com, all the links are there. I do shows a couple times a week. And, in my off time, I'm just kind of living life and researching and taking care of my dad. And
a wealth of knowledge.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I do look forward to being back and also to having you ladies on the show as well.
And see you at the Reawaken tour. We're going to see you in May. Our first one that we get to go to. We're very excited.
And Mary Grace will be a speaker. So
Yes, I will be speaking at Reawaken. I think it's going to be May 12th and 13th at the Trump Doral. And so guys, if you're in Florida, this is a great chance to go see one of the Trump properties, because once you set foot on a Trump property, you understand what he means when he says "Make America Great Again," because everything is such high quality. It's like it's unmatched quality.
I remember the first one I went into was in DC with my husband, and I just was saying, look at this, like the attention to detail, which I'm a very detailed person, and I just thought it was amazing. So yes, well, we will definitely see you there, and we just
thank you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And please follow us on your favorite platform and email us at momsonamission53@gmail.com with questions or comments. That's momsonamission53@gmail.com. Also, please visit our website at momsonamission.net. That's momsonamission.net. And there you can see our latest Moms on a Mission episodes as well, in addition to your favorite platforms. So we appreciate you. Thanks for following us. Thanks for tuning in today.
Moms on a Mission is excited to partner with our friends at MyPillow. According to sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle to get a good night's rest. That's where MyPillow comes in. They make the best pillows, sheets, mattresses, and mattress toppers. Several years ago, I was having trouble falling and staying asleep due to neck and shoulder pain. Luckily, I heard an ad about MyPillow and decided to give it a try. After 3 or 4 days, I really began to feel a difference. I was sleeping better and my neck and shoulders felt so much better. MyPillow really does help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. Moms on a Mission wants you to get a great night's rest too. Go to mypillow.com right now and use the promo code MISSION for up to 66% off your purchase. MyPillow products are made in America and have a 60-day money-back guarantee and lifetime warranty. Remember, go to mypillow.com, put in the special code MISSION for your special Moms on a Mission discount. Thank you and God bless.
Hey guys, it's Moms on a Mission here. Are you worried about your financial stability and protecting the money for which you work so hard? The problem is stock market volatility and inflation. You may be wondering what you can do to preserve your family's wealth. We at Moms on a Mission encourage you to reach out to our friend Andrew Sorcini with Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Andrew is the expert in educating you to help you find the right balance of gold and silver for your family portfolio. He made it so easy for me to add precious metals to my financial investments. I simply mailed a check to Beverly Hills Precious Metals and my silver showed up on my doorstep a few days later. It was so easy. Go to bh-pm.com to save a little money and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. That's bh-pm.com. Don't wait. Protect your wealth today by going to bh-pm.com and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. Hi everybody, it's Moms on a Mission here. Recent research from the CDC says that millions of Americans develop parasitic infections and symptoms often go unnoticed or are misdiagnosed.
Parasites are the cause of many health problems, such as anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue, and unexplained digestive issues. We all need a common sense strategy to improve our health.
We at Moms on a Mission encourage you to reach out to our good friend, Dr. Jason Dean. Dr. Dean's Full Moon Protocol provides all-natural detoxification and fights inflammation. These supplements are made with 100% organic ingredients and are proven to kill parasites safely and effectively.
To order your Full Moon Protocol, go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. Order Full Moon Protocol and start killing those foreign invaders that have been keeping you sick. That's bravetv.store/mission to receive $20 off your first order.